Hello and welcome back to Theatre Beard, the YouTube channel specifically for students of the performing arts, drama and theatre and performance, whether that's GCSE, BTEC, International Baccalaureate, or even if you've just got a bit of an interest. Welcome. I'm so pleased that you could join me for this video today, all about Artaud and the Theatre of Cruelty. Don't forget to check out the timestamps in the description box so you can skip ahead to the most relevant section of this video for you. Or, of course, you can watch the whole thing. But before we begin, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. If you could hit the subscribe button as well, that would be fantastic because I do have a lot more content planned for you. Also, if you've got a video that you would like me to make, then by all means pop your suggestions in the comments because this channel is as much yours as it is mine. So, let's get started with Artaud and the Theatre of Cruelty. Born in 1896 in Marseille in France, Artaud had a bit of a troubled life from the get-go. At the age of 4, Artaud contracted meningitis, which can be a fatal disease. He survived, but it left him very weak, and it was just the start of a lifelong dealing with several health issues and mental disorders. As a teenager, Artaud suffered bouts of depression, and at the age of 16, he had a full breakdown, and his parents sent him for lengthy stays at the sanatorium. In 1916, Artaud was conscripted into the French army, but he was discharged because of sleepwalking, and he was sent back to the sanatorium where he was prescribed opium. Opium is not great for people with depression, and it's also highly addictive, and Artaud began a lifelong addiction to opium and its derivative, heroin. In his 20s, Artaud moved to Paris and he connected with lots of surrealist artists and also appeared as an actor in some surrealist films. However, the surrealists eventually rejected Artaud on the grounds that he would not renounce theatre as a bourgeois commercial art form. They wouldn't let poor Artaud join in any reindeer games. Now, commercialism means that it has a broad mass appeal, so a lot of people are going to really enjoy and connect with that work. And as you're about to find out, the work of Artaud is hardly commercial. It's not exactly The Lion King. From 1926 through to 1928, Artaud co-ran Theatre Alfred Jarry, which is where he started to develop his theories, which later would become the collection of essays, The Theatre and its Double. But we're going to return to that a little bit later on. Artaud then went to Mexico where he indulged in his drug addiction, actually detoxed and then relapsed and returned to France. He then went to Ireland for a period, but in 1937 he returned to France in a straitjacket after he experienced a period of psychosis where he attempted to attack some people. So it was back to the sanatorium for Artaud, and this was the start of a 9-year stint in mental institutions after he was diagnosed with incurable paranoid delirium. And despite it being incurable, he was subjected to an intense course of electroshock therapy. Artaud was eventually discharged and his friends paid for him to stay at a private clinic where he continued writing, and eventually in 1948 Artaud died after being diagnosed with cancer. It was during this period of hospitalisation in 1938 that Artaud's text The Theatre and its Double was published, and it's still a hugely influential text to this day, which is why you're studying it. If you think about the content that I've produced for you on this channel, you can see that over the years there's been a huge conflict around what modern theatre is, what it can be and what it should be. We've looked at naturalism, which was trying to capture real life and to put that on stage as faithfully as possible. We've looked at epic theatre that was trying to get audiences to think about their lives and the world around them and to use theatre as a tool to influence, shape and change the world. Artaud's Theatre of Cruelty theory wants to use theatre as an expressive, visceral representation of life using symbolism and ritual, magic and myth. He wanted a performance style that rose above realism, which he referred to as psychological and human stagnation. Now, stagnation is a term that means not flowing or not moving. It just sits there stagnant. Artaud stated that one of the experiences that influenced his theory was witnessing a performance by a group of dancers from Bali who performed at the International Colonial Exposition in Paris in 1931. He wrote that the performance was addressed first of all to the senses instead of being addressed primarily to the mind as the language of words. It's worth pointing out here that Balinese dance performances do sometimes contain words and story and language, but obviously Artaud, being French, couldn't really understand it. However, he's able to connect with their performance because of their movements, the use of gesture, their facial expressions, so he isn't relying on language to understand their performance. It almost exists outside of the realm of words. And for me, this is one of the key concepts of the Theatre of Cruelty. The Theatre of Cruelty is quite a difficult term because I think we often think about cruelty as like cruelty to animals, but Artaud isn't talking about physical violence on the audience. It's not that kind of cruelty. But rather, Artaud wanted a theatre that would create an impulse inside the audience members that would shake them out of this stagnant existence that I spoke about. And it is this violent awakening that we refer to when we talk about the Theatre of Cruelty. As I mentioned earlier, the Theatre of Cruelty was less about language and plot and narrative and more about audio-visual spectacle. It would use music and dance and bright, bold lighting to really shake the audience up into them realising life's cruelties. Artaud envisioned performances where audiences would be in the middle, they would sit on swivel chairs so they can follow the action, but they're still somewhat helpless and trapped by this performance that takes place all the way around them in an act of organised anarchy. To Artaud, the theatre should work on the audience's senses and waken them to a world that is more visceral, more intense, more true than the life that we know. That society had been lulled into this comfortable sleepwalking state, and the Theatre of Cruelty was there to shake them and wake them with magic, myth and ritual. It's a theatre of screams and laughter and gasps and sobs rather than polite, contained applause. Artaud believed that good theatre should be more real than life itself, that it strips away all these constructs that society has built and brings us back to something essential, the essence of life. For me, I have quite a basic, uncomplicated way of thinking about all of these different theatre theories. So I think about naturalism as being all about the heart, thinking about emotions, getting lost in a story with these characters. With epic theatre, it's all about the brain, so I'm thinking about the performance, I'm considering how it applies to the real world, I'm being objective. And with Artaud and the Theatre of Cruelty, it's all about the gut. So thinking about something a bit more primal, a bit more instinctive and basic and visceral. So it's about stripping away the behaviours and thought processes that we've been taught as a society and returning to something a lot more essential. And that concludes the Theatre Beard video all about Artaud. Just like I did with the Brecht videos, I'm going to break these down into bite-sized chunks. So this video has been all about Artaud's life and his influences and the theory of the Theatre of Cruelty. I will be making a second video which is all about the techniques and strategies used when creating Theatre of Cruelty performances, and hopefully you'll be able to use some of those in your own work if you are doing some practical work in this style. But for the meantime, thank you so much once again for joining me. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And if you click on the little bell, you'll be alerted every time there's a new post. And I'll see you next time. During this stay at various mental institutions, During this stay at various mental institutions, I can't say mental institutions. During this stay at various mental institutions, it was during this stay at various mental institutions. It was during this stay It was during this time that while Artaud was at these mental institutions, he was sent for lengthy stays at the sanitarium. It was during this period of hospitalisation that Artaud's text, The Theatre and its Double, was published in 1938.